2023 MLB Draft going down here on a Sunday. 20 total rounds, but just 2 rounds here on a Sunday. They're holding the draft out in Seattle at the home of the Seattle Seahawks. And you can see here at the very top, it's got a Cajun feel to it. The Bayou Bengals, 2 LSU players going 1-2 for the first time in the history of the Major League Baseball draft. You can see there Paul Skeens, the big right-handed pitcher, throws 100 miles an hour. Dylan Cruz, the all-world outfielder for the national champion LSU Tigers. And then a round of high school players here at 3 with Max Clark going to the Tigers. Wyatt Langford, also in the SEC, was in that College World Series and lost 3 games in that series to LSU. The left fielder for the Florida Gators. And then with the 5th pick, the Minnesota Twins taking Walker Jenkins. Like I said, another high schooler there from South Brunswick High School in North Carolina. So 4 straight outfielders taken after Paul Skeens. Let's go ahead and bring back in Chris Welsh, CBS Sports Major League Baseball draft analyst. And let's start there at the very top there. Just the significance, historically speaking here, for Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz here for LSU. What does it mean to you, Chris, here to have those 2 guys being picked 1-2? First time we've ever seen that from one school going in the 2023 Major League Baseball draft.
I mean, from a collegial standpoint, it's awesome seeing, 2 great players from the same school go. That's great. One thing I'm really happy about is there was just a lot of chatter, and this comes in every single draft. Baseball's a little bit different than a lot of other sports in teams saving money. It's a big conversation about the best player doesn't go, but they can save money to spend it later. That didn't really happen here. I personally love Dylan Cruz over Paul Skeens, but it was 1A, 1B. So we got a situation where not only was it teammates, which is great, but you got the 2 best players in college baseball going 1 and 2. So no one can really scream about teams saving money and not making the right picks and fan bases calling for people's jobs. These were the 2 picks that you make. So I think that makes it special. And then all but more, these are teammates that are going 1-2. They can historically be tied together, not just for what they did in college baseball, but what they've now done in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And brought a national title there to LSU. Alex Box Stadium, the folks down in Baton Rouge definitely can appreciate those guys down at LSU. With the 3rd pick, the Detroit Tigers, they took Max Clark, the outfielder, the high schooler from Franklin, Indiana, first high school player drafted here. From what I've seen here, he's got a lot of speed. He's a burner out there. Tell us a little bit more about Max Clark.
Max Clark, if you want to look at pipeline grades on him, 60 hit, 50 power, 70 run, a 65 arm, a 60 overall grade. His high school numbers look like video game stuff. As you can see right there, 646, 33 RBI in 28 games. His senior year, he's had huge stolen base numbers. I want to say it might have been 88 steals over his high school run. One thing I really love about this kid, and I was at the MLB Draft Combine that was out here in Phoenix not too long ago, and he was doing interviews. He's poised. He's one of the smartest baseball players out there, and he's one of the most competitive. Funny enough, Paul Skeens got a lot of conversation about how competitive he was. Max Clark wants to be the best, and he will work to be the best. He's a phenomenal hitter. I love his approach. I was just rewatching video today, and he can change his approach sometimes on the pitch, or it's going to be in the situation where he can hit across the body. He can get it short so he can have pull power. He's not trying to do too much. He's an analytically driven kid. This is a star, and he's also one of those, kind of new generational players where he's already built an entire fan base, YouTube channels. He's probably got bigger Instagrams than anybody here on this network. It's crazy what he's done. He's a phenomenal talent, and he was in line to go number 1 overall. I'm a very big Max Clark fan.
All right, good stuff there. And number 3 here, we just talked about Max Clark. 4th, we saw Wyatt Langford there. That's the outfielder from University of Florida, of course, got to the national championship game series there in the CWS, losing to LSU, coming up 1 game short. But you look at his numbers, though, Chris, higher OPS than Cruz, a little bit faster than Cruz, not as good defensively. Tell us a little bit more about Wyatt Langford there with the Florida Gators and the great season that he had.
I can tell you from just some conversations I've had with people, the Rangers are probably very pleasantly surprised with how this played out. I'm not even so sure that they thought they had a chance at Wyatt Langford. 60 hit, 65 power. He can also run. He might be a full-on 5-tool player. He's big and stocky, like you can see right there. A little bit of a shorter attack on his swing, which he's generated huge power, 21 homers this past year. He had a max exit velocity in college of 114.2. There's plus power, and over 90 average exit velocity at 90.1. Also, his 90th percentile exit velocity, 107.6. So really being able to tap into it. And this is another one of those guys, he was learning and attempting to try to cut down on his strikeouts. He walked more than he struck out this past year. He was a 4, listen to this slash line, 4, 5, 8. We use the 3, 4, 5 as like this great number for really fantastic players. This is obviously college baseball, but it is almost 4, 5, 8. An 818 slug, 1300 OPS. And if you were to ask people about the biggest power in this draft, it would be White Langford or a guy that we might see in day 2, Kemp Alderman. But if you're looking for the biggest power with hit tool, this is the guy. White Langford, for all the right reasons, was in conversation to be the top pick. And the Rangers are getting an absolute steal at 4. They have got to be elated.
Wow, a good team already now. Maybe have this guy come up here very shortly to join that stacked lineup there in Arlington with the Texas Rangers. And the Twins round out the top 5 here. They take Walker Jenkins, the outfielder from North Carolina, another high school player. What is the comp here between Clark and Jenkins? I see there was a lot of back and forth. You see and hear from some people Jenkins is better. Maybe Clark is the more well-rounded player. This guy has more power. This guy has more speed. Maybe he'll have to play one of the corner outfield spots. What do you know? And what's the difference here between Clark and Jenkins, Chris?
But one of the biggest things is size. Funny enough, when you look at most of the projected first-round hitters, I looked, and this is obviously a rough science here, I found 4 hitters that were 6'3" and above of the projected first-round hitters. 2 of them are on the far, far back end, and Walker Jenkins is one of them. The other one we might hear in just a little bit, Jacob Wilson out of GCU, but Walker Jenkins has power. This is 60 hit, 60 power. Run is definitely going to go on the side of Max Clark. So you're talking about size. I think there's a little bit more projectability in Walker Jenkins because 6'3", 215, 220, wherever he's at right now. It's a beautiful technical swing where it looks like he could generate 40-plus power, but he had a hamate injury this past year, so he wasn't on a ton of circuit baseball like Max Clark was. Max Clark was out just absolutely shining everywhere, and Walker didn't get that opportunity. But this is the moldable piece of clay who already represents huge, huge offensive upside that the right organization can mold out. And like I said, you want to look at the big thing. There's just not a lot of crazy, big, physical, projectable, fun players as far as offense goes in the first round. Not to say that they're not great, of course. Dylan Cruz, great. White Langford, great. But it's 6'1", 6 foot, 5'11" across the board. Walker Jenkins is not that. This is the big, big prototypical power outfielder coming out of high school that this team is going to build up and might be one of their top players in the next year or 2.
Yeah, and Clark is seen as the better defender and a little bit more faster there than Walker Jenkins. He is our CBS Sports Major League Baseball draft analyst, Chris Welsh. We really appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of Sunday and the Major League Baseball draft heading into Tuesday as well. We really appreciate your thoughts and your analysis here. Top 5 picks, Major League Baseball draft going down in Seattle here on a Sunday. Paul Skeens, the big righty, throws 100 miles an hour, has the stash, and also a national championship at LSU. He goes number 1. His teammate, college teammate Dylan Cruz, first time 1-2 from the same school, go 1-2 in the Major League Baseball draft. The outfielder, the center fielder from LSU as well. Then had a high school player, Max Clark, goes to the Tigers. They're from Indiana. Wyatt Langford, another outfielder from the University of Florida, lost to that national championship game to the national championship game series there to LSU. And then rounding out the top 5, the Twins take a high schooler, the right fielder Walker Jenkins from South Brunswick High School in North Carolina. Top 5 picks of the Major League Draft here on a Sunday night. Well, here's the top 10 picks. We talked about Paul Skeens, the big righty from LSU, and Dylan Cruz, also from LSU. First time the top 2 picks come from the same school in Major League Baseball draft history. We go down to 6 through 10. The latest picks here. Jacob Wilson, a shortstop from Grand Canyon. He's in there to the Oakland A's at 6. Rhett Lauder, remember that name, from Wake Forest, the great pitching lab that they have. Did some great things for the number 1 team for the end of the season in college baseball. Blake Mitchell, a catcher there from high school in Texas, goes to the Royals at 9. Chase Dolander, remember that name, from Tennessee, had a great sophomore campaign. Came back here in the junior season, a little slippage, but did get to the College World Series. And at 10, the Florida Marlins rounding out the top 10. Noble Meyer, a high school pitcher, the first high school pitcher in high school to be drafted from the state of Oregon. Let's go ahead and bring back in Chris Welsh, our CBS Sports MLB Draft analyst. And let's start right there at number 6 with Jacob Wilson going to the Oakland A's. Had a really good season for Grand Canyon. Hit .412, a really good contact hitter. His dad played in Major League Baseball, same position, shortstop. Tough guy to strike out there, Chris. Just struck out 5 times this season. What can you tell us about this young man here, Jacob Wilson?
Yeah, Larry, that's like my favorite thing. I'm glad you said that right off the top. So I was going to do this big presentation, be like, check this out, Larry. This is the craziest stat. 4.2% walk rate, 5 strikeouts on the year. It's crazy. He also, doesn't strike out. He doesn't walk a whole bunch. 2.6% K percentage, and over 600 slug. He is a unique player because it's good defense, it's incredible contact skills, but there's just not a ton of power. I've got some limited data on a few pitches, 100-plus pitches. Average exit velocity was only 83.7, which is well below average, but 94.48% contact percentage on those with a 94, this is my favorite, a 94% 92 mile an hour contact percentage. So on pitches 92 plus miles per hour, he had a 94% contact percentage. He's got the bloodlines. He's got a great hit tool. I don't know if that power is ever going to develop, but clearly the A's, they've got their future shortstop. They've got a future middle infielder who can get on base, is going to hit a whole bunch and play some great defense. And he was right out here in my neck of the woods over here at GCU.
Yeah, and the A's, the future, you talk about their future, it's a little murky, but boy, they need a lot of help. And hopefully that Jacob Wilson can provide a lot of help, even if it's in Oakland, which it will likely not be, or out there in Vegas. We'll see about the Oakland A's. How about the Reds at number 7? They take Rhett Lauder. We know that name there. Wake Forest. We know about the pitching lab. Probably the second best pitcher there. That changeup, I hear it's like A+ there. What can you tell us about Rhett Lauder and how he sort of will translate in Major League Baseball?
I love Rhett Lauder. I mean, outside of Paul Skeens, this is a very different pitcher, though we got to see them go up against each other, but I love him. 15-0 record, 1.87 ERA, 143 strikeouts, only 24 walks, and had a sub-1 whip last year. Fastball sits between 92, 96. There's some good break on it, 24% swing and miss, but that's not where things get done. Like you said, it's around the changeup. 85 miles an hour, can get up to 87. There's a lot of arm side break. It sits in the zone a decent amount, and it generates big whiffs, around 43%, where the average on changeups is around 31. He also has a slider. He's a great command pitcher. He's going to attack the zone. There's a lot of swag too. Big, long hair. Hope he keeps that. This is an organization that obviously does great things with pitchers. There's a lot of movement. So it'll be interesting to see because, you look at those other two guys at the top of the organization in Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. Hunter Green is built off of the fastball, and then they develop that slider. Nick Lodolo, before being injured, had that insane, 40-inch vertical, crazy whiffed curveball. This is another guy with secondaries that this team is going to be able to work with. And I just love command guys. If he had a bigger fastball, I might have even comped him to kind of like a George Kirby feel. Really, really high command with whiffs on maybe not the biggest stuff. Kirby's got a bigger fastball, but I love Rhett Lauder.
Yeah, and Rhett Lauder definitely demonstrated he's probably the second best pitcher in college baseball and acquitted himself pretty well in the College World Series against LSU. The Royals at 8, they take Blake Mitchell. He's a catcher from Sinton, Texas there. Has a big bat and some power. Where's he going to play? Do you think he stays at catcher or they move him positionally there once he makes it through the minor leagues and into the bigs here, Chris?
Well, an interesting thing was Kyle Teal, a college catcher, was also kind of presumed in this spot. And this kind of told me, Kyle Teal, similar to actually Blake Mitchell, there were some questions on maybe this is a guy that could play in other spots. To me, seeing this, I kind of feel like they made the decision. They wanted this guy to be a catcher, where Kyle Teal maybe didn't fit some of the mold. He's got a huge arm, 70 grade on pipeline arm, a really good hit tool, really solid power. Maybe this also is a little bit, when you talk about Kyle Teal, maybe this also is something about what they're going to do in the second round. Maybe they're going to be able to save a little bit of money on a high school catcher, which you don't typically see high school catchers drafted this high. Maybe there's going to be a cost savings so they can do something in the second round, maybe another high school, maybe a high school pitcher, someone that might be a little bit more difficult to sign.
And number 9 here, the Rockies. We go back to the SEC, very dominant league there. We saw Tennessee get into the College World Series. You look at Chase Dollander from Tennessee, fastball in the upper 90s. Had a better sophomore campaign, I guess that's safe to say. Not quite as dominant this past year, but quite, clearly here. One of the best pitchers in baseball, definitely a top 5, top 10 pitcher in college baseball. What do you see from him and how he will perform at the next level here, Chris?
Well, selfishly, as someone who does enjoy the Diamondbacks, I was hoping that Dollander would be available there, but the Rockies jump on it. As far as the player goes, 70 graded pipeline fastball, the 50 on the curveball, a 60 slider, 6'2", 200 pounds. That fastball anywhere from 95 to 97. He's got a slider cutter. It kind of moves around. Sometimes it doesn't have quite as much break. It's got a lot of spin. 37% swing and miss rate this past year. MLB averages on sliders are around 33. Command was just kind of gone, and that was his big problem. This is a guy that was projected to be the #1 college pitcher and maybe the #1 player before the preseason, even over Dylan Cruz, just because of how important, and we see this here with Paul Skeens being taken, college pitching can be. The command was just lost. Now I will tell you, kind of would have loved if it was in another spot. If you're talking about developing pitchers, Colorado, not the friendliest place to be pitching. And I'm really not sure how we can look at their development overall. But if you think it from their perspective, how often are they going to be able to get pitchers in? So you kind of see why there's been a glut of pitching draft picks over the few years. And this is a guy that does have potential high-end ace SP1 type of stuff if they can get that command under control. But this is a great pick.
Yeah, and Chase Dollander, you're really good when you fall off and you're still in the top 10. That's how good and how good his stuff is and was there at the University of Tennessee, good old Rocky Top in Knoxville. We'll round out the top 10 right here, Chris, with the Marlins taking Noble Meyer, right-handed pitcher, first high school pitcher off the board. Probably the top high school right-hander is what I saw there. Upper 90s with the fastball. What can you tell us more about Noble Meyer, the high school pitcher?
So high school pitching can be dangerous, but I will tell you, I think even with, it's very dangerous saying this because Paul Skeens is in this class, but I think Noble Meyer has a chance to be the best pitcher out of this class. I'm not going to take it away from Paul Skeens, and Paul Skeens is the guy here. Obviously, there's some questions, but Noble Meyer's upside is huge. I actually got to see him in the MLB Draft Combine, and he was all dressed, dressed to the nines, walking around. Everyone's wearing polos. He was in suits, talking to teams. He was one of the top most 5 impressive players during interviews there. It's a big fastball, mid-90s slider, and it's a power slider as well. He had a 10-1 record through 31 games, a .33 ERA with 128 strikeouts, only 19 walks. Teams loved him. I think a lot of teams wanted to draft him, and high school pitching is a dangerous game in development. A lot of people focused on, hey, Paul Skeens at #1, pitching is dangerous. We just saw a high school pitcher go in the top 10. This might be, maybe, I'm being a little bit dramatic about him being the #1 guy because Skeens is in this class, but this might be a guy that we look back on in a couple years and we're like, how did he fall to 10? He might be the most underrated pick in this draft. And it looks less underrated, though, because he was taken in the top 10. Noble Meyer is a fantastic pick for the Marlins.
Chris, I just want to make sure I heard this correctly. Noble Meyer could be the best pitcher, and we're talking about Skeens. We're talking about Louder and Dollander. But this kid could be the best of the crop?
It's tough to say it with Skeens. I almost wish, take Skeens out of your head. Everyone delete Skeens from your mind. Okay, now look Louder, now look Dollander, look at the rest of the guys. I think Noble Meyer could be the best non-Skeens pitcher out of this entire class. And he went to an organization in the Marlins. Look at what they've done. Jesus Luzardo has been phenomenal this year. Sandy Alcantara has obviously had some step backs, but this team knows how to develop pitching, and they just got hands down the best high school pitcher. Big physical guy, too, by the way, 6'5", 185, projectable body. I don't know. I really like Noble Meyer. Trying to get too excited about high school pitching, but I love this kid.
I love how you said, I'm not trying to be too dramatic here, but you gave us some drama there.
I gave you some drama.
You did, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, man, we really appreciate it, man. He's Chris Welsh, CBS Sports Major League Baseball draft analyst. Chris, enjoy the rest of the draft. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you down the road. Thank you, brother.